Hi, Ross.
Hi.
So I just have a couple of questions on global workforce. And I was wondering, maybe what are the organization challenges that we see nowadays?
Yeah, there's lots. I think in the past, it was normally sufficient for companies to manage their workforce with one or two simple and relatively clear assignment policies. What we see today is that organisations are increasingly having to operate in a much more complex global environment. And obviously there's also many more types of mobility. So when we think about the future, these changes will just increase in pace, especially as workforces become more agile, become more diverse, and ultimately they become more demanding.
Does this mean that mobility teams can now expect more support in terms of resources and budget?
Yeah, that would be nice, but yeah, reality is that mobility teams are going to have to do all of this extra work with less or with the same. And more so, the mobility teams I know are being challenged by the businesses to reimagine mobility as we know it.
Oh, what does that mean, reimagine?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's three key areas where global workforce will really drive change. Firstly, companies should accept that global mobility will continue to diversify, and they should look at how they use their limited resources accordingly. So for example, a company may want to move away from a policy-driven mobility program to one which is much more holistic in nature, especially in terms of support from technology and from external partners. Secondly, what's clear is that global mobility will continue to become much more human-centric, which I think is a good thing, but companies need to try and implement programs to support the well-being, the development and the recognition of their employees who are moving cross borders. The third area is that the actual global mobility function itself is going to change, be it with more automation, with different ways of collaborating, with better use of data analytics, for example. And I think mobility managers really need to understand this and be ready for this change because it will have a huge impact upon their jobs.
In that regard then, in your opinion, what should organizations do?
Well, I think organisations need to take into account these types of themes when they're building their business plans and when they're making their annual objectives. It is a really exciting time to be involved in global workforce. There's a huge amount to think about, there's even more to do, so it can be a little bit overwhelming, but companies should remember that it's a great opportunity for them to leverage their global workforce, and it's an even bigger opportunity for mobility teams to make an impact within their organisations if they get this right.
Thank you very much for this insight, Ross.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.